pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Want to welcome members of the local NAACP. Welcome. And we're going to go the roll call.
Mayor Gerardo Anaya,
Present.
Vice Mayor Miguel Villalpando,
Present.
Councilmember Luis Galindo, Councilmember Jesus Roldan,
Present.
Councilmember Martha Garcia,
Present.
Juan Castillo,
Present.
Member Lorena Sendejas.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to go call to the public. Anybody from the public wishing to address council? There's no one. Okay. We're going to read a proclamation of Black History Month. During Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, political development. And whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson, noted Black scholar and son of former slaves, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, and for many years, the second week of February, chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, was celebrated by African Americans in the United States. And whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month, and is now celebrated all over North America. And whereas after the Civil War, many Black Americans sought a better life, free from oppression and in search of new economic opportunities and the liberty to create their own lives. And whereas many African American settlers found their way to the Grand Canyon State, where they have made invaluable contributions in many professions and fields that continue to enrich the history and culture of our community. And whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our nation's attention to continue need to battle racism and to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals. Now, therefore, Mayor Gerardo Anaya, Mayor of the City of Somerton, on behalf of the citizens of Somerton, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month in the City of Somerton, and urge all citizens to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. I want to invite council and members so we come and all hand up proclamation.
We're trying to do it now.
Mr. Mayor and City Councilman, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to be here today. You have already addressed Black History Month. There's one other thing that we would like for you to consider, maybe sometime a little bit later on, and that is Juneteenth celebration, which is the 19th of June, and it is now a federal holiday, by the way. Some people might ask, well, how did this actually start up? Well, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January the 1st, 1863. Well, there was no internet back then, no television. You couldn't put it out anyway. The only way you could send it out is through writer. Well, the first writer he sent out was killed for some strange reason, coming out with news that the slaves were free. So by the time the news actually got out, there was a Union general. His name was Major Gordon Granger, who actually landed in an island off Texas called Galveston. Now, Galveston is a place where my mother was born, my grandmother was born, and I spent all my summers. So I'm really, really familiar with Galveston. Well, when he landed in Galveston, and it was approximately 2.5 years later, June 19th, hence the name Juneteenth, 1865, he spread the word then that the slaves were free. Well, just by saying it doesn't actually make it happen. And it took months and months after that before the word could get out, even though the Civil War was actually over then. So again, just a little bit of history on Juneteenth and where it came about and my own personal connection with it too. Now, I had one person ask me, well, why do you celebrate Juneteenth? Aren't you a U.S. citizen? Well, yes, I am. I'm also a retired Marine Corps officer. So I have much love for this country. I was born in 1952, but before World War II, many people, especially Black people known then as colored people, were not allowed to celebrate the 4th of July. And we can only celebrate Juneteenth. That's the reason why we have such a deep connection with that particular day. We weren't allowed on the beaches on the 4th of July. We could only go on Juneteenth. So even to this day, I have many relatives who celebrate Juneteenth, and Texas has had it as a holiday for many years. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and we hope you give Juneteenth consideration in a few months when it comes up. Have a good day.
So Mayor and Council, Jorge Lozano, City Attorney, just to let you know, staff will be preparing a resolution for consideration at the next council meeting to determine whether or not Juneteenth can be recognized as a holiday for city employees. That'll be up at the next council meeting for discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again. We just made history today. Thank you.
Moving on to consent agenda, we have one item, approval of minutes for City Council meeting of January 4th, 2022. Does any member of council want to remove an item from consent agenda? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Motion by Councilman Castillo.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Sendejas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a presentation of 2020 census count question resolution operation. Mr. Tapia.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. As you know, the 20 census was held, the survey was held on April 1st of 2020. And during that time, as you know, during the pandemic, we have a lot of issues regarding the some people answering the survey, the questionnaires that it was online. And Somerton, unfortunately, was the final count was not actually the expected numbers that we had in the last few years, and also even the state numbers that we sent to the state demographer. So one of the issues that we right now is challenging is how we can actually go at the block level, challenge the housing units found by the census and the housing units that the city of Somerton has. So the good news is that the 20 census count question resolution operation, which start on January 3rd of this year. So now we have the opportunity to start working with the census. And if we find discrepancies, as we know we have discrepancies, we can start working with the census and send this information to them for review. But first, Andrea, let's go to the slides first. Continue. I'm going to skip the table first. It's a very important table I wanted to show you, but let's go to the actual, the 2020 census account question resolution operation. Primarily, all the communication that the Census Bureau is going to be doing to the city is going to go through to the highest elected or appointed official or their representative. So normally that will be you, Mayor. You will receive emails or letters, official letters from them, indicating that what they receive from us or they're gonna send them back to us. There are a couple things that we can actually challenge. The boundary cases are the ones when you adjust the city limits, like annexations. In our case, we didn't have any annexations in the last 10 years. That's so in that case, boundary cases will not be able to challenge that. But the housing count cases, that's the one that we can actually work on this, because if we find errors, the Census Bureau will also take a look at those errors and create a case. So they can start reviewing those errors based at the block level population and housing units. What they say, based on the CQR, which was started back in the 90s, they will not change the official 2020 census data. But what I will do, though, if errors are found, then those changes are going to be used during the following years, like a 2021, 22, 23, the actual estimations. The estimation that they use at the state level is actually the official numbers that the Census Bureau estimates every year. As you know, in the last few years, the state demographer are using the data from the Census Bureau. So those numbers are going to be able to be modified if we find something errors. Next. So their website is going to be very active, putting information starting from actually last month. And what they committing to cities in counties all over the US, if the city submits a case, a challenge, then they're informing us that it's going to take within 90 days to respond, which is very good. So if we find an error on the data, so we send our case to them. So people are expecting some results or some data back to us within 90 days. So as I mentioned, they already starting receiving cases January 3rd of this year. And the results is going to be provided through the website. But we have a little over 1.5 years to submit cases. And I think our case is going to be focused primarily on the housing unit count at the Black level. We already started doing that on the last few months, even myself in the last 3 weeks. We started comparing our GIS maps and the actual housing units that they gave us on the April 1st, 2020 with our numbers that we had. So we're using aerial photography. We're using the building permits that we had in the last 10 years. That's why I wanted to show you the table. Next, Andrea. So this is the city of Somerton city limits that we have. As you can see, the boundaries are not that big. That's why we need to be very thorough and careful where we actually have the census blocks. The census blocks are going to be within the census tracts and within the block groups. So that's going to be very, very critical for us to actually understand that the census blocks that we review are within our city limits. Because if we send a case challenging some numbers, then we need to ensure that it's within the census tract, the block group, and the block level. Next, Andrea. Now, please go back to the table. I think this table is very important because as you can see, the population back in 2020, we have 14,287. And then in 2020, April 1st, the Census Bureau found that we have 14,197. As you can see, it's less population than we had 10 plus years ago. So the July 1st, 2020, as you can see, 18,039. That's the number that the state demographer gave the city of Somerton for the state share revenues that we use every July 1st of every year. As you can see, we lost close to 4,000 people, the estimation that the state did for us, and the actually numbers found by the Census Bureau in April 1st, 2020. And then a couple months ago, the state revised their numbers based on the Census Bureau findings and revised that July 1st, 2020 to 14,241. Because the difference between April 1st to July 1st, they gave us some credit for some building permits on those months. And then last year, they gave us on July 1st, 2021, 14,477. So as you can see, that base is very critical because the base that the state is going to be using from now forward. And for July 1st, 2022, they're going to be using only the new housing units that it was approved, that were built from the July 1st, 2021 to July 1st, 2022. And those numbers are going to be on top of the 14,477. So the importance of this question, the census operation, if we find errors, is that we can eventually change the base. So we can add more housing units to the base and eventually population. On the next row, housing units, the Census Bureau found On 2010, 4,052 units. But during that time, on April 1st, 2010 and April 1st, 2020, we actually had 862 building permits, new homes, new residential units. And we had 23 demolitions. Homes were demolished in Somerton. So you can see the number that we're supposed to have is 4,891. And the Census Bureau, what they're giving us is 4,149. It's a big difference. We have all these new homes in Somerton in the last 10 years, and they're actually giving us only a few, like 90 something units on 10 years. Doesn't make any sense, of course. So our challenge is gonna be to demonstrate to the Census Bureau through the question resolution operation is where these units are missing based on the building permits that we had during the last 10 years. So that's very important. Another number I wanted to show you is the vacant units. Look at the difference between 2010 census, they found 261 vacant units. On 2020, they found 189. So we had less units vacant in 2020, and still our population went down. So there's a discrepancy right there. Again, on the vacancy rates, on 2010, they found 6.4% of the housing unit stock were vacant. In 2020, they found 4.5%. So why is we're reducing the vacancy rates, we're reducing the number of vacant units, we lost housing and we lost population. So these are the numbers that we're gonna focus and challenging the census. But we need to actually do a good job in indicating exactly at the block level where those errors are. Because if we do, then eventually the numbers that are very important is the share revenues. The July 1st base that we need to increase so we can continue building the base year by year by year until 2023 when we get a new census. Unless we do the 2025 special census, but that's very expensive. Most small cities don't do it because it's really expensive. But that's an option though. But in this case, on the next few months, we're gonna concentrate on challenging the Census Bureau on these numbers so we can actually change the base to use it for the July 1st of every year. So that's very critical for us to actually challenge these numbers. Mayor, that's all I have, but if you have any questions, more detail, I'm working with GIS maps right now in comparing the housing units at the block level and what they gave us and see if we can find those discrepancies.
Any questions or comments? Victor, when are we looking to submit the CQR?
Even though we have a year to do it, we're gonna do it as soon as possible. Because for us, it's very important to, before the July 1st, 2022, if we can actually modify that base. But I'll be done probably review in the next maybe 3 weeks, probably. Probably by March, I'll not be able to send something. And it's gonna come through you. All the package that we send, it has to come through a letter from the mayor and an official package to send it to them.
Or an appointed official, right? So the mayor.
Or an appointed official, yeah. So we can do it, and by March, we should be able to be ready to find something and then send the challenge to the Census Bureau.
Councilman Roldan?
Question, I don't know for Hector or Jerry, if we get information before July 1st, is that going to change our share revenue from the state? Is it an impact yet or no?
It's unlikely because it's going to take a while. They say 90 days to respond. If we send it in March, it may not be, but for the following year, I think it's more going to be for the following year. Because right now, let me just explain the process that we do. The Somerton and Yuma, San Luis, in this area, we send the building permit activity, the new housing units that are permitted, to WCAG. WCAG collect all this data and send it to the state. All the demolition, the new housing permits, apartments, and collect the data and send it to the state. The state use those numbers to estimate the population that we have for all the cities in the state. The difference with the Maricopa Association of Governments, what they do, MAG actually calculates the estimations for Maricopa County. Here, WCAG is only a middle agency that sends the information to the state. We don't actually create the estimations in Yuma County. My recommendation will be to actually have an agency in Yuma County to create the estimations so we can actually challenge even the state at the state level numbers, like Maricopa County does with the state demographer. Right now, we rely on them to provide those numbers, even though we know they are incorrect. The state, they don't want to challenge the Census Bureau, but we can do it. But it's because the process that we do in Yuma County is not the same as Maricopa County. They do challenge every year.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Hector.
You're welcome.
Moving on to new business. Old business, sorry. Discussion of possible action to approve budget increase for Cinco de Mayo celebration from 8,000 to 25,000 for Battle of the Cheladas.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Brisa Garcia, Special Event Coordinator. In the beginning of 2021, Council approved Lucha Libre event for Cinco de Mayo celebration scheduled for May 7, 2022. Event would take place from 6 to 11. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, wrestling talent cannot guarantee performance. Battle of the Cheladas would replace the current event. The increase of budget is for the procurement of stage sound, music, security, and drinks. If approved, the venue would be at Joe Munoz Park for a possible fee to assist with budget. Of course, the team's goal is to get as much sponsorship as possible. So the team's goal would be for us not to charge for the event if council does approve it.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question. Where would the difference from 8 to 25,000 come from? From which fund?
The
I can answer that question. It's from contingency.
Any other questions or comments? You watched the Netflix show, huh? The Chelada one.
I did. I got motivated. The team feels that the event would be very successful. It was done in the past by a private promoter. It's a great event. No city has taken this theme. I think it would put us as a city in a better place as we already are with our events.
Is there a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
So motion by Councilman Roldan, second by Vice Mayor Villalpando. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Council.
Moving on to new business, presentation and discussion of possible creation of a code of ethics governing the conduct of elected officials and appointed officials.
Mayor and Council, several months ago, we did have some issues with the conduct of a former council member. And in speaking with outside legal and speaking with the mayor as well, trying to figure out any issues or how to solve the problem from ever presented itself again, outside counsel basically directed us to look at ethics and or conduct from other municipalities that they have. And I've attached those municipalities, which I believe it's Maricopa, Mesa, Tolleson. And this actually looks at more of the Tolleson one, which in all, as far as the roles, the responsibility, and the respect of the behavior of mayor and council fell into all those three. First of all, is the roles of mayor and council as public servants, the responsibility thereof with the preservation of public trust, laws, and policies that fall into the laps of mayor and council as they do ordinances and proclamations and what have you. So those fall into your laps. And also within that same guideline, the respect and integrity and honesty that falls from your constituents that believe in mayor and council and how to behave in that aspect of it. So with those, we looked at several of the policies and protocols related to that conduct based on the behavior of council members amongst yourselves, council members and mayor behavior with city staff and the communication thereof, including with the public in terms of how to conduct yourselves with other public agencies, including boards and commissions as well, because it's not just about mayor and council, it's about our commissioners as well. And also this includes with the media and the respect thereof on how to communicate, what to communicate, and those type of policies as well. And this also, in looking at Tolleson's, we looked at, they have actually a line item on there for former council members when addressing current council to disclose whom they're speaking to. Are they speaking in terms of a former council member, a resident, or another agency? So that has to be also taken into account. And with those, and all these, I mean, there's a lot more detail in it, but that's kind of an overall summary aspect of it. But also on how would the public and or staff members make a complaint regarding mayor and or council, and how to go about those complaints. And not only going about the complaints, but how are yourselves going to have warnings amongst yourselves for that conduct not to occur again. And when we looked at legal counsel, including with the mayor, and how to make sure that it's not only just a warning, but how are those folks going to be sanctioned. So when we looked at the whole picture in itself, one thing that mayor and myself looked at, including with legal counsel, was right now there's nothing that you can do at this point to sanction, to reprimand, or any warning whatsoever to any of yourselves moving forward. Unless there is some sort of ethic policy to bring forth, then at that point, there would be some sort of reprimands or warnings and or sanctions. But at this point, there isn't any. So you have no legal background onto any repercussions at that point. But again, this is just a summary in itself. I did attach a couple of the cities' ethics, some of the column of enforcement of ethics, but some of them actually was interesting. They have different names to it. Code of ethics, other just code of conduct. So it depends on what mayor and council want to decide if they want to move forward with this type of policy. Is there any questions, concerns?
So how would this process work? Will we have a executive session to come up with, or will we? How do you foresee this process?
If I receive questions from you and or ideas, then we'll put them together. Look at what other cities may have and use those as a template, and present it to council for approval at that point. And before this, we would have outside legal counsel look at it, making sure that it's it's at that point feasible with that correct language, and they'll bring forward for mayor and council as an ordinance.
Jerry, can you elaborate more on that former council member when addressing current council, disclose for whom they are speaking?
What happens is that sometimes former council members may come to you and state items that might have been stated during when they were former council members. And that's the thing that they must kind of at least notify you if they're doing it as a former council member to have those discussions, because maybe some of the discussions were in executive session. I may not know. Or at least they stated either is for their business and or themselves as a resident. So they have to be very specific of how they're coming to mayor and council and speaking to you as a former council member or mayor or what have you. And they just have to make sure that that's specific enough and descriptive. Councilman Villalpando.
Mayor, I have mixed feelings about this, and it's not for the wrong reasons. It's my frustration that, and let's be honest, I mean, it is what it is, you know. This complaint that I have before me was against former council member Carlos Gonzalez, where he physically threatened a member of administration. And I feel that we're having to take these steps now because of the actions of one individual who's demonstrated to have a record of stepping over or outside his authority. But my comment would be these individuals that have complaints or concerns, why do they drop these complaints and concerns? You know, the biggest concern that I have is that do we even have the authority to sanction? You know, have we reached out to what's our legal, the Arizona risk pool? Have we reached out to the Attorney General's office to have some proper guidance? Because we could put all these ethic and conduct policies in play, but do we really have the authority to sanction? When this particular incident happened, I had hoped that there was follow through, but obviously I have the emails in front of me and I'm reading them. It was dropped. And now the same individual now is running for council. And the fear factor for that, probably that individual that this happened to is still there, you know, that if he makes it, he's going to have repercussions. So my recommendation to you as our city manager is to make sure that these complaints are followed through. You know, no employee should have to deal with that type of stuff. Again, I've heard numerous, and I always would advise the employee to follow through with their complaints. But yet to date, nobody does. For fear of repercussions, fear of retaliation. That's even worse for the person that they're accusing if they try to retaliate. So I guess my message to employees is they shouldn't feel threatened or fear that they'll be retaliated. If something is outside of the scope of our authority as council members, then they should bring it up. They should complain. But how much is this code of ethics and policy going to do? If you guys follow through with this, and my recommendation is to make sure that it's something where the sanctions are going to be able to stick. Because again, you could have as many policies as you want, but if people don't follow through with their part as following through with the complaints, then what good does this do? Nothing. And so that's why I have a little bit of a concern, because when this happened, first words out of my mouth were like, file a complaint and follow through with the Attorney General's office if you have to. I mean, there's nothing I could do. So again, if it's a policy, make sure that it has some teeth to it, that the sanctions are going to be there in order for us to ensure the safety and the peace of mind for our employees, because us as council members, we shouldn't be getting involved with employees. We have two individuals that we provide direct supervision to, city attorney and city manager. Granted that the judge, I think he's contracted by council too, but I don't even want to touch that. So that's my 2 cents on this. You know, my recommendation is to actually put some sanctions in there that will be able to have some teeth into this.
I have something.
Castillo.
And I was gonna also, looking at at the some of the enforcements here, council conduct with other council members, with city staff, so let's say, for example, just hypothetically speaking, how would it look like if someone files a complaint against, any one of us? Would there be like a grievance process, or how would that look like? Because there's always, I always like to say there's 3 sides to a story. It's your side, my side, and then there's the truth, right? So how would that look like? Especially if we're going to be talking about sanctions and holding. I do believe that, as council members, we're not above any policy or procedure. I in one of my first trainings, when I became a school board member, was knowing the difference between I'm here to govern, not manage. So I always, in any situation, I rephrase back to that simple statement. But at the same time, I know there could be times where someone does, let's say, file a complaint, or which they have their right as an employee. If we ever cross the line, or we do something that we shouldn't do. How would that look like? Who would decide that? Or I guess that's where I would want to kind of know more about how would that look like, and but I do agree that I do feel that when it comes to conduct, I mean, it's sometimes it's not so common, but being respectful and professional, I think it's a must, especially us in our positions. We should be held at higher standards than staff. So I guess that would be my question. How would that look like if someone complains, and because we would also have our side of the story to tell, and what would happen.
In looking at Mayor Will, and looking at some of these other municipalities and the way they have it written, it's almost like an employee. It goes through that grievance process as far as looking at an informal level, and either through the city manager and or city attorney and or mayor, depending on who is it for. If it's one of the other council members, obviously the mayor needs to be involved, and look at that determination at that point. If it's just an informal, and it just moves it through that process of informal and then written, and then at the end, because you are elected officials, it's at the end of more of a sanction, removal from other committees and or speaking with staff or what have you.
Okay, and you know what, and I think it's also important, talking about this topic, to also inform staff about the processes, and if they feel, let's say, threatened or intimidating. I think for us, it's important for us to create a safety environment without having that fear of reprisal in any situation, because I think that's the last thing we as council want to create. we want to have that openness and that safety where, hey, if they feel like that, they should be able to kind of follow through. And I think that could also go with the HR trainings. I believe that to inform employees on that.
On here on some of the sanctions they have, I believe this is Cocopah, I'm not too sure. They have a warning letter, reprimand, a demand for a non-monetary restitution, might be a public apology, a return of gifts, and then the last but not least, removal by council based on majority vote.
If a line is crossed.
Yeah, but as elected officials, do we have that?
Do we have that authority?
And if so, who's giving us that authority? Ourselves? That's what I'm saying, that we need to reach out to different entities and make sure that we are, whatever sanctions we impose, we have that authority to do it.
Based on some of these, Article 9 may result in sanctions deemed appropriate by council as far as that sanction is concerned. Violation of state law provisions described herein should be punished as provided for in state law. The language used in imposing sanctions will be consistent and follow a specific format as established by council.
So can you reach out to outside legal to make sure that, I'm willing to put it on the table and say, hey, you know what? If somebody keeps violating it and he wants to be voted off, then so be it. But again, I want to make sure that legally we have the authority and it's not going to come back in a form of a lawsuit.
No, we had that discussion with outside legal as well. At this point, there's nothing you can do at this point today.
Yes.
Moving forward, if there is a policy at that point, yes, then you have the authority at that time.
No, my recommendation would be to meet with staff. There's also needs to be a component of how staff feels and what give recommendations of the council staff interaction, and then maybe we can have a work session where we can have outside counsel and we come up with a policy and of course getting those examples and having that as a guide and speaking amongst us and what's important as far as expected behavior that we want. Not necessarily there should be sanctions, but I see it more as even have some of the language that we get as a training for elected officials, what our role is, and maybe it's not sanctions, but they're for some of the stuff, but it's how to deal. We can't be calling staff in the middle of the night and calling that my neighbor's water is shut off, and it seems something so simple, but it happens amongst us, and I constantly need to remind council members. So I think get with staff and see what they're without naming names, what the major complaints are from council members and how they want to be treated, and then we can incorporate it into this code of ethics.
And just for the record, it was a council member, not council members. I don't want to be included in that one.
Any other questions or comments?
Just comment, Mayor. I was just glancing through this, the one sample, and looks pretty good. It talks about council conduct with the media, with other commissioners, with other entities that you're with, and so forth. So I think overall it's something to quite reinvent the wheel, right?
So they're very specific, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are longer than the others.
Sanctions and all that.
Yes.
So that's
Jerry, did you look at Yuma and San Luis to see if they have
No, this
anything
is the
similar?
one that our outside legal counsel gave us to look at specifically because they really have good ones.
Do the surrounding communities have anything?
I didn't even check to our surrounding.
Okay.
I was more worried about ours.
Well, I just wanted to see if we, I know that, but I just wanted to see if, we have something to compare, if they have something similar that we could look at as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Nope. Not for me.
So we can look into it and speak to staff, and then so we're ready and we can have a work session with. Okay, we have a executive session, but we're gonna go into a summary of current events.
Early warning for COVID-19. Our wastewater continues to decrease. We just received it earlier today. Based on the results, we continue to be at a level 2 of concern. Omicron variant presumptum is the virus. On another note, we did receive a letter from WASIPTA on the increase for fees for fiscal year 2023. Fees have not changed since 2012. As a reminder, also, we have a mayor and council retreat scheduled for February 19th at the Senior Center. Also, for anybody outside, for those who are interested in running for mayor and council seats, packets are available from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. here at City Hall. Mr. Mesa.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members. Just want to mention that Rec Division assisted with free baseball and softball clinics this past Saturday, January 29th. We had a successful turnout with 43 participants. Between them, 15 ladies or girls. The Art and Wine event was rescheduled to Saturday, April 23rd. And that planning is ongoing through work sessions with the Parks and Recreation Commission. Also, the recreation specialist position is open, and we are actively seeking to fill this key position within our department. We want to get this squared away before the ongoing or upcoming activities begin. Thank you.
Chief Deanda.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. In the past weeks, we had handed out over 150 some self-tests. This last week, we only handed out 12 self-tests, and we had 5 employees that we tested that weren't uncomfortable testing themselves. Transports, we only had 2 transports for COVID patients, which is a very, very steep decline. I did a follow-up with the hospital. Out of 12 people that we transported, only 1 of them remained in the hospital. So that means that they're not even staying a long time in the hospital. 2-3 days and they're being sent home. We had 9 fire department employees that got infected from the middle of December to now. None of them have lasted more than 10 days positive. They go to negative really quick. So, and we attribute that to the almost 100% vaccination that we've had at the fire department. Most of them were symptom free. They started having runny noses, so we tested them just to check, and they were positive. Other than that, we can see it on the decline, and we helped the Caballeros this last Saturday. We provided EMS standby for their marathon, and that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Chief Juarez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Pet Palooza reminder real quick, this Saturday, February 5th. So we'll be at the Council Park for those animal pet owners that wish to get their animals vaccinated and taken care of. We'll be there since I believe everybody's showing up about 8 in the morning. So there's some postings on Facebook where you can gather more information for the public. Also, we continue to provide our citizens with welfare checks every day. We're sending officers out to make sure that they are fine. For 2021, we've received a report of 196 calls for issues regarding cats. We're continuing to work with the Humane Society of Yuma to set up some traps and get these pets neutered and spayed. And unfortunately, in some cases, they're brought back to the community. So that continues to be a complaint for the citizens of Somerton. There's a lot of cats just loose and roaming around, but that's all we can do at this time. Our officer for animal control has been out for a while now, so we're working closely with Public Works to pick up any animals that are dead on the road. So if anybody has any additional concerns, make sure you call the police department. We'll do our best to go out there and get them removed from the streets. And lastly, our officers are working closely with the police academy. Our field training officers are out there making sure that they're training, that they're evaluating some of the scenarios that the cadets are going through. This is something that's very important to us because it not only helps the cadets, it allows the field training officers an opportunity to review where they're at, how they're responding to the training, and it allows our field training officers a better grip of how to deal with the officer once he's back on the road with us. And last thing I have is we continue to provide the best service possible that we can to our citizens with the resources we have. Thank you.
Public Works Director, Sam Palacios.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. An update on our Bali Vista water main extension project. Contractor completed the water crossing under Highway 95 and started the connection that line, the 12-inch line, with an existing 10-inch line on south side of the Highway 95. Parkview Avenue new traffic signal and right turn design project. Consultant engineer completed and submitted the 60% design plans. We met with them this morning, go over some items to discuss, and we're going to perform the plan review this week. And the last, our second water tank rehabilitation project. Project was advertised this past Sunday and Monday. Plans and specifications are already sent to the plan rooms, and we also have the plans and specs in our website. Thank you.
Community Development, Carmen.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. The Community Development staff is working on a request for proposal. This is to do the update of the zoning and subdivision ordinance. As you know, after the general plan is updated, typically the City of Somerton updates also the zoning and subdivision code. The plan is to publish the request for proposal by the end of February. Hopefully get an award. Council needs to award the consulting firm project, hopefully by the end of March, to start the actual update of the code sometime in April. And once we have all this schedule in place, we are going to open an invitation to the residents. This is a very, very important code that we utilize in the Somerton, but it needs to be also reviewed, and the residents need to voice their opinion as far as the changes, what they want to see in the code. That way, when we are enforcing the code, this code, then the residents of the city know exactly what it is about. So it's very, very important for all the residents to be part of this update, as well as any other code within the city. So that's going to start, hopefully, like I said, in April, the actual update of the code. We are also working on a lot split process for the Somerton Elementary School District. We finalized the lot split. It has been recorded, so now we have two parcels. One parcel is where the actual elementary, the new school is being built. The new parcel is, we have received a request for a rezoning process. So now the developer wants to change the zoning or district that we have, which is government. They're planning to rezone it or request for a rezone to R15 and potentially R3. So we just received that request, and we are working on that. it has to be going to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then after the Planning and Zoning Commission, it will have to come to council for final decision on that one. And lastly, just to remind you that there is a resolution adopting the new development fees that will be presented to council for final decision at the first meeting in March. We've been going through the entire process, and this will be the very last step in the process to adopt the new development impact fees. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor, our two other folks, finance and economic development, are ill. Yes. But they did send their information. The narrative for Avenue ED Industrial Corridor project was submitted by the Southern Arizona Coalition for their consideration. This is part of the ED Build Back Better Regional Challenge Grant. In addition, we met today with our grants personnel to look at the different areas that we'll be working on here next week as well. And for finance, one thing to consider that our city sales tax, we still haven't received all that information for the second quarter. And for state sales tax, at this point for our second quarter, it was higher than last year. So it looks positive at that point. We'll see how it ends up. But at this point, it's been higher. And that concludes.
Thank you. Councilwoman Garcia. Councilman Castillo.
I want to go ahead and invite everyone. We will be having our groundbreaking ceremony for a second school. It's within our Somerton school boundaries. It's going to be in San Luis. It's on Thursday, February 3rd at 11 a.m. I was there at the baseball clinics this Saturday. It was a very good turnout. I want to give kudos to Jessica was there and Josue was there assisting. I also saw, I'm sorry, I drew a blank. The photographer taking Vanessa taking pictures. I do want to thank that staff that was there. It was a very good turnout. I think when I left, there was about 40 players, 40 kids that took advantage of the clinic. People came from, there were some from San Luis, some came from Yuma, and Jessica was taking registration. So I think that worked well. How many did we register by any chance? Just out of curiosity. Okay, because I know she was there inputting that. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Councilwoman Sendejas.
Just to remind everyone about the vaccine clinic that we will be having next week, February 10th, at the Cultural Center between 3 and 6 p.m. Registration will be Monday. Monday registration will be this coming Monday.
Councilman Roldan.
Nothing, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
I don't have anything, Mayor. Thank you.
And I don't have anything. Just the only meeting that we had was forefronted. It was last Monday, and we had a presentation from the multiversity, and so that's probably the only item that we discussed, right? Yeah. So we have one item in executive session. It's discussion or consultation for legal advice with the Somerton City Attorney relating to operations of the Cocopah Rio Colorado Golf Course, a facility owned by the Cocopah Indian Tribe, an Indian reservation located within or adjacent to the city. Is there a motion to adjourn into executive session? A motion by Councilwoman Sendejas.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Castillo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So we're going to take a 5-minute break and then go into executive session.